Dragons. Dragons are some of the most fearsome resonators and rulers in Force of Will. They boast high stats and high costs, and in some cases make great boss monsters. Dragons have gained a small bit of support thanks to the newly introduced Dragonoid archetype. So this time I'm going to be talking about one of the fiercest, most resilient, and strongest of the Dragonoids based off of BS anime power levels. Flute. Flute comes from Echoes of the New World, which gave us a lot of solid rulers and cards, and even one of the few that can compete at a competitive level. Both books received an ample amount of support in this set, enough so that they can hold their own outside of the top tier. Even Adalbert, in all his disappointing glory, has decent cards that can get his engine of Wanderer race cards started. You'd think that with all this support, Flute would also at least have the same qualifying minimum that Spicy Boy does. So let's take a look. Okay, one Resonator, 2 draw spells, an addition that draws, and then an addition that's arguably just a weaker version of Optional Possession and Dreams of Flight. Okay, so Flute was not designed with a win condition in mind. Instead, she fills a role similar to that of Reflect Refrain, where she adds utility to your deck and you build other things around that. The most valuable thing she can do is add consistency with her ability to tap and draw a card on a ruler side, and her ability to return cards that went from your field to the graveyard the turn she flips. It's important to note that you don't get chance back from doing this, as they resolve on the chase and then go to the grave, so all you can grab are Resonators, Additions, and Regalia. She has one of the cheapest judgment costs, coming in at 1 blue, and can then spend 1 blue and 2 void to flip over from her J-ruler side back to her ruler side again. She's pretty cost efficient at recycling, assuming you can bring things to late game, but there's not really much you can do to get there. There aren't many decks that pop off late by destroying both yours and your opponent's fields that are also able to completely rebuild themselves. Her abilities kind of fall flat the longer the game goes, but I guess you can do some cheeky stuff with her in Shade or Tama if you really wanted to. You can run Flute with a lot of different decks thanks to your utility nature, and my current favorite is Blue-Red Aggro, that focuses on using either Misty Dragon or Charlotte as your boss monster to end games. Charlotte can get pretty big thanks to Flute's ability to consistently draw. Hell, you can easily get her to 2k attack with something like Optional Possession, and if you happen to also have Dawn in hand, then it's game if your opponent can't stop you. Misty Dragon is a very strong card thanks to its ability to remove itself from the field to help dodge targeted destruction. It also works well with cards like Blood Boil or Blood of the Mikage, which can boost its attack to over 1500, and then dodge the destruction ability by blinking before your turn ends. You can just flip Flute over if something goes south with either of these Resonators and get them back in your hand for next turn in a pinch. Flute works well with aggro strategies because she helps circumvent the fact that hard aggression tends to run out of steam really early. Aggro feels even worse in a counter-heavy format, but Flute at least gives you access to draws if an opponent stops your plays. Flute has a lot of really unique combos thanks to how she works and the odd amount of decent Dragonoid support. One of my favorites is the newly released Dragonoid Doctor, who makes it so a Dragonoid you control recovers at your end phase the turn he's played. This means that you can call a stone and draw with Flute on the same turn, making Doctor a decently sized 2-cost body that also replaces himself. The other unique Dragonoid support card I like is Fury of the Obsidian Dragon, which is a 3-cost chant that destroys J-Resonators equal to the amount of Dragonoids and non-Dragonoid dragons you control. This is the cheapest J-Ruler destruction in the game right now, and Flute can make it live whenever. It's also worth pointing out that Kirit can run this too, but he can already kill most J-Rulers on his own without the help of Fury. It goes without saying that Flute works well with cards that banish themselves or other Resonators to get their effects. I already pointed out Shade and Tama, but here are a few others. Hoel Pig lets you call a stone or draw a card, recover Flute, and then flip her over to add Pig back to your hand. It's not the best strategy to continually recover Flute, but it's certainly a thing you can do. Flute works decently with Leaf Golem, since you can play it from either your hand or grave by banishing a Leaf Wing and Leaf Fighter that you control. Simply summon Golem, flip Flute, and get your cheap resources back to either play another Golem or set yourself up with 2 more bodies. This can also work with Gear Atmos or Vingolf Bahamut, since they can both banish Resonators to be played from hand. However, they are much harder to bring out than Leaf Golem is. Flute can recur cards like Jack or Shadow of Lapis that remove themselves to give you something better. While I think there are better decks you can play Jack in, Shadow of Lapis is cheap enough that recurring him is pretty cost efficient. You can also use her with a card like Flamesome Nyarlathotep to stockpile Will and hard ramp after you reach a certain stone threshold. Flute also makes for a decent Majin ruler. You can use her with cards like Majin Subjugation to recur your banished Resonator from the grave and potentially put 2 big threats out at once. Flute is a very fun ruler to play with in Wanderer format thanks to the prevalence of Incarnation cards. She makes for an interesting Cthulhu ruler since you can get back your sacrificial fodder. She's the only ruler who can get a 7-card Cthulhu train going, which can go off on turn 2 if you have the luck of the gods. I've put together a few example Flute decks. 2 of them are New Frontiers and 1 is a Wanderer deck. If you happen to have a lying around or want to give her a try, I would suggest using any of these, they're all pretty fun. The first is Red-Blue Aggro and focuses on applying pressure to your opponent with resonators like Lars and Redcap until you can get out a Charlotte or Misty Dragon. The second is a gimmicky Majin build that plays a bit slower, but relies more on Flute's J-Ruler side to do things rather than just make use of her ability to tap and draw cards. You can also run blue-green to go hard into draws with Tama and Mike until you can play a Charlotte and swing for big damage with her, but I couldn't really find a deck idea with that I liked versus just playing the other two. I've also put together a deck with Cthulhu's and Dragon Wanderer, but it doesn't do much in the actual format unless you're playing for fun. Unfortunately, Wanderer is still pretty unbalanced until we get an actual ban list for it. I really like utility rulers. I think they add a lot of variety to the game and open up some of the biggest possibilities in terms of creativity. It's a shame that archetypes have become so strong now that it's hard to push boundaries, or when those boundaries do get pushed, it leads to dumb combo decks. I think Flute would have been much better if her J-Ruler effect added back all cards that went to your graveyard to your hand, rather than just those that went from your field. I also think her flip over effect on her J-Ruler side could have cost one void less. Overall, I think Flute is interesting, but flawed as a ruler. Her power and utility is outdone by plenty of other rulers in Lapis Cluster, but she still has her place as a gimmicky combo ruler.